Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Going into the 2023 season, Lewis Hamilton has made a statement of intent to the opposition, saying that yes, this season wasn't the best, but he's going to be back and better than ever going into the new season. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to dive into today, of course, the tyre testing that was done in Abu Dhabi. Mercedes were getting a fair few laps in with Hamilton, with Russell, and also with Vesti as well. Now, of course, look, Hamilton, probably his worst season ever. You can look at some previous seasons back in the late McLaren days, and they might have been at times more depressing seasons than Hamilton had here, but, you know, this is certainly down there with the worst, especially compared to the last, since the turbo hybrid era, really, winning on average like 10 races a season, and then winning none in 2022, no pole positions as well. So, obviously, probably his worst season that he's had in a very long period of time, and his first without a pole position or a win in his history, kind of a break in his streak. If he had a win this season, he would have extended his record beyond Schumacher's record, I believe, as well, that he had in terms of 15 consecutive seasons with a win, but you know, he doesn't do that, and the W13 didn't deliver for him. It's not like he had many chances, really. Like, there were a couple of races where Mercedes were competitive, but Hamilton was never really in with a great shout. There was Zandvoort, where without the safety car, he maybe had a chance, and then there was Silverstone as well, where without the safety car, there was maybe a chance he caught Leclerc and won. Austin as well, it was possible when he was leading with the Verstappen pit stop mistake, but in the end, Red Bull just had too much pace, and then with the collision that he had with Verstappen in Brazil, that kind of ended his chance there. So there wasn't really a clear-cut chance for Hamilton to win this season, but of course I'm sure he's frustrated not getting the win and having that record broken. Now, Mercedes kind of have everything put together to be a winning team and to bring Hamilton more victories, but they don't have the car right now. This season, obviously, the car wasn't there. If it had been a pre-cost cap era, they could have just thrown $400 million at that car and probably created a car that was good enough to win a good couple of races at the end of the year. Without that situation, though, without being able to spend that much money, their car was always going to be kind of inflicted with the mistakes they made at the start of the season. But Toto Wolff said in this interview the other day, we'll be back, don't worry, and basically talking to Hamilton and saying, yeah, don't worry, we're going to give you a good car next year. They believe they've got on top of the issues, and seemingly as does Lewis Hamilton. This is kind of what he puts on Instagram earlier today. I'm pretty sure I speak for all of us when I say I'm glad the season has come to an end. So Hamilton is not pulling any punches, didn't like the W13, made it very clear that he doesn't want to drive it ever again, basically on his kind of list of cars that he can drive in the future. And he also says, I won't miss it as well. So interesting, right? Because people look at this and think, damn, you know, you kind of trash talking your engineers a little bit, but I'm sure they kind of get the picture here and also realise the frustration with the car that they had. Still, I want to thank my team for all the hard work this year. Through it all, we pushed on and learned so much that will come to get us back to the top next year. I have no doubt we'll come back better. We will be back. I will be back. Now, of course, this may echo some sentiments that were said at the end of last season, where Hamilton said, you think you saw a good version of me at the end of last year? Wait until next year, right? After trying to fight back for his title. Obviously, never had the car to really challenge for it, and when Toto Wolff said whatever it was, like, you know, they'll have targets on their back next year, that didn't age particularly well either. So we'll see if this ages well. And also Hamilton's comment earlier this season, or before the start of the season, saying, you know, my team don't make mistakes. There's been a few comments on Mercedes that haven't aged particularly well over the last year or so, really. Will this be another one? Basically saying we learned so much, we'll be back on top. And that is certainly true to a degree, right? They did obviously learn an awful lot this season, and even George Russell said at a time that he believes the learnings that they made this season, the mistakes that they made, that now they've understood and capitalized on and improved from, he reckons other teams will make the same mistakes in the future that they've now got over. So that's an interesting point there from Russell that says, you know what, by making these errors, we've learned more about these regulations than other teams have, and therefore puts them in a better position into future seasons. So intrigued to your thoughts on that in the comment section below. But can Mercedes get back to the top right away? That's the thing. We know that Ferrari have more in the tank in terms of if their car is reliable, if they can increase the power of their engine effectively, you know, they can be more competitive than they were. If they can improve their strategy, Ferrari should be a competitive outfit. Red Bull are not going anywhere. Verstappen's the best driver on the grid right now. There's no doubt the way he's been driving the last season. So, you know, what are you going to do about that Red Bull Verstappen combo? The penalty to their wind tunnel testing time probably won't start to take real effect until at least halfway through next season. So that's the competition that Mercedes have. We're not really expecting another team like an Alpine or a McLaren or even an Aston Martin to turn up next season with a rocket ship. Maybe in a year or two out from now, there could be a chance that hopefully McLaren or, you know, Aston or some other team actually field a competitive car again. But, you know, for now is not going to be the case, right? So that's the thing. Mercedes, can they beat Red Bull? At the start of next season, I think it's going to be tough. But this was also a point here from George Russell suggesting that their kind of struggles in Abu Dhabi is a nice wake-up call or reality check for Mercedes because, you know, they of course came off their Brazil triumph, their 1-2 with a massive high. The team had so much confidence confidence going into next year, and now they know, you know what, it's not all, it's not all good, right? We've not solved all the issues with this car. It's still bad at circuits like Abu Dhabi with the straights. I think they knew based on their data and their simulations, it wasn't going to be a good circuit for them, but it was probably worse than even they expected after their victory in Brazil. So maybe that's actually a good thing in a way to kind of turn down the off-season complacency if there was any, right? Because, you might think after the Brazil one too, okay, we've fixed it, sorted, let's get this car out and kind of like fix the issues that we thought that we had last year, and we're good to go to win the championship again. It might make them think, you know what, we still need to be vigilant in terms of reducing the issues that were affecting them this season. Now, Jacques Villeneuve actually gives his thoughts on Hamilton and what he thinks this means for him next year, because in a similar way to after 2021, losing the title in the way that he did, and there was expectation that he would come in with the absolute fire, and I think he did, in fairness, but obviously when the car didn't deliver, he had to switch quite quickly into a mode of, okay, you know what, I'll just try and do what I can to improve this car, went into full guinea pig mode for the first half of the season, and tried to work with the team to actually make them understand it, try different things out, some of them worked, most of them didn't work, and they got to a point where they had a winning car, and I'm sure Hamilton feels like, okay, despite 0 poles, despite 0 wins, I'm sure he feels a sense of accomplishment in himself, because I'm sure that he feels like he was a big part of the team ended up developing a car that was capable of winning a Grand Prix as they did in Brazil, despite the fact that he didn't win one. I'm sure he feels like to some degree that's mission accomplished for the season given where they started. Now, the fact that Hamilton will not have a win or a pole position to his name this past season, what does that mean for his mentality next year? Because that streak has now been broken, and Hamilton said, look, it doesn't really affect him that much. He obviously already holds those records, right, in terms of, at least equals them in terms of poles in a row and, wins in a row and stuff like this. But what does it mean for his mentality next year? Because Jacques Villeneuve reckons that, as he just goes on to describe, he reckons that Hamilton's going to basically hit new levels. Next year, I expect a lot from Hamilton. We are going to see the best Lewis. He ended the season without a pole position and a win. That will do something to him, I think, and it gets fun. Mercedes has been able to improve. We saw that in Brazil. So, will it kind of make him more focused, more driven, more kind of, on the ball? Because, when you've won 10 races in a row for like 7 seasons in a row, there's probably a point where you think, I'm just going to win everything all the time. Doesn't happen, of course, one season, and there might be a period of refocusing and reassessing in this off-season to come back even stronger next year. So it's an interesting question. The other point to me that I'm excited for, certainly, and hopefully this will be the case, is how competitive it might be between Russell and Hamilton. Of course, this season was the first season since 2010 where 3 teams had a 1-2 finish. You see this and you think, damn, must have been a great season, really competitive, right? Wasn't really the case, unfortunately. Red Bull kind of ran away with it. But nonetheless, pretty cool to see, and I'm hoping that next year we get a good, let's say a 4-way title fight. It'd be great to see, because Verstappen's really always going to be the man at Red Bull. Leclerc, I think, in terms of being a championship contender, is probably always going to be the man in terms of pure pace at Ferrari. But Mercedes, Russell and Hamilton should both be in the fight. With any luck, we have 3 competitive cars and at least 4 drivers in the fight, like we've had back in the day on occasion. And what does the relationship look like between Hamilton and Russell when things get tasty? Because this season, of course, Russell beat Hamilton, which is very rarely occurred in Formula 1 history. But at Toto Wolff and Hamilton's been like, and even Russell's been like, well, it doesn't really matter, right? We're not fighting for a championship here, we're fighting for P4, P5, P6. Hamilton was like, I don't really care, to be honest, that Russell's going to beat me. But I think Hamilton even said in a statement, if it was for a championship, if it's a P1, P2, then yeah, I most certainly care about beating my teammates. So that's where things get interesting, right? Because obviously Russell is far more competitive to Hamilton than Bottas has been, and really any driver has been to a top driver in quite some time on a top team, right? It's kind of has echoes to some degree of a Hamilton-Rosberg situation. We know how that ended at times. So, that is one of the exciting things for me, at least, is just to see next season if Mercedes do have a competitive car and both of them are fighting for a championship and fighting for victories, then, what kind of elements do we see coming out of Russell and Hamilton? I think there'll be more respect there than we saw with Rosberg, but still, it's going to get pretty tasty if they have a competitive car. They expect to have a competitive car. Hamilton believes they're going to be back on top. Toto Wolff believes they're going to be back on top. Jacques Villeneuve reckons Hamilton's going to come different next season, but still, we have seen similar statements coming out of Mercedes after last year that they were going to really be gunning for the title again. Didn't occur, and even they've admitted they're like 10 months worth of development behind where Red Bull are because of all the issues they've had to fix. We'll see if they can sort it out for next season, but very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.